Malik Carter didn't just write a paper that changed his grade. He wrote a paper that unraveled a tenured professor's career, ignited a campus-wide movement, and forced an elite university to confront the quiet, insidious ways it had always doubted brilliance that didn't come dressed in privilege. In this story, Malik Carter's refusal to accept silence as a verdict becomes the catalyst for a reckoning that challenges not just a professor's bias, but an entire institution's definition of excellence. If you liked the video and subscribe to the channel, let's move on to our story. Enjoy watching. Malik Carter walked into Professor Harrow's office with his head held high, clutching the manila envelope that contained his graded paper. His fingers trembled slightly, not from fear, but from the weight of everything this moment represented. The assignment had taken him 2 all-nighters, 6 library visits, and 3 complete rewrites. He'd poured his entire being into those 12 pages, his voice, his history, his brilliance. Now, he stood across from a woman who seemed to see none of that. "I'm sorry, Malik," Professor Harrow said without looking up. Her tone was crisp, rehearsed. "This just isn't your work." Malik's brow furrowed. "Excuse me?" She finally met his eyes, her expression unreadable. "This paper. The structure, the citations, the clarity of argument, it's far too advanced for your performance level." "My performance level?" he echoed, incredulous. "You've gotten B's and C's in past assignments. You've never written like this before." "I improved." "It's more than improvement. It reads like a graduate student's thesis." "Frankly, it doesn't sound like you." "Because it's better?" he asked. "Because it's not yours," she said. A beat of silence. "I wrote every word," Malik said, jaw tightening. "I've flagged it for academic dishonesty. The university board will review it. I'm giving you the chance to confess now and reduce the penalty." Malik's heart thudded hard in his chest. "So I either lie to protect myself, or I stand by my work and let you ruin me?" Professor Harrow shrugged. "That's up to you." Outside the office, the air felt heavier, almost metallic. Malik walked across the quad like a ghost, the murmuring of other students fading to static. It wasn't just the accusation, it was the familiarity of it. The disbelief, the underlying assumption that he couldn't be that smart. That someone like him, black, from a public high school in Cleveland, raised by a single mom, couldn't possibly write something that resonated on a higher academic level. He texted his best friend, Andre. "Malik, she says I cheated. She doesn't believe I wrote it." "Andre, again? Bro, you're too damn smart for them." "What now?" "Malik, I fight it." The university had a policy. Students accused of plagiarism could appeal to the Academic Integrity Board. Malik filed his appeal that evening. He included his notes, rough drafts, even timestamps from Google Docs. He added citations from the obscure post-colonial theorists he'd discovered. Still, the hearing wouldn't happen for 5 days. 5 days of doubt. Of professors whispering. Of classmates choosing sides. On day 2, the story made it to Campus Wire, the student-run news site. A headline read, "Sophomore Malik Carter denies cheating accusation. Bias or breach?" By lunch, he couldn't sit in the dining hall without someone snapping a photo. Some students nodded in solidarity. Others avoided his gaze like he was radioactive. Dr. Evelyn Harrow sat in her office the same evening, scrolling through student feedback from Rate My Professor. Among the ratings, one recent comment stood out. "Brilliant professor, but doesn't believe students of color can excel. Ask me how I know." She closed the tab and exhaled slowly. Her fingers hovered over Malik's paper, rereading his thesis. The intellectual legacy of the colonized does not begin at the point of contact with empire, but from the unbroken thread of cultural resistance that predates conquest. She rubbed her temples. It was too good. It scared her if she was honest. The boy had written circles around most of her graduate students. And it wasn't just imposter syndrome, it was a fear of losing control. By day 3, protest had started. A group of students gathered outside the Humanities building, holding signs that read, "Believing black brilliance isn't optional. Let Malik speak. Bias is not a grading policy." Malik stood on the steps, unsure whether to speak. A megaphone was passed to him, and for a moment he hesitated. Then he remembered his mom's voice, "If they won't hear you, make them listen." He stepped forward. "I didn't come here to be exceptional. I came here to learn, to grow. I came here thinking I could be treated like everyone else. But when I succeed, suddenly it's not mine. Suddenly I'm too smart to be believable. And I'm tired of fighting just to be seen. Cheers broke out. Students chanted his name. Someone live-streamed the speech and within hours, it hit TikTok's trending tab. Professor Harrow watched the clip in silence later that night. Her inbox pinged with messages, some supportive, others scathing. She closed her laptop, suddenly unsure of everything. By day 4, the university president issued a statement. We are committed to fairness, transparency, and the right of every student to appeal. We take all allegations and the context around them seriously. Translation: we're scared but not taking sides. Yet, Malik was called in to meet the Academic Integrity Board the next day. But they had a request. If he truly believed in his innocence, would he be willing to write a second paper, live in a controlled room under observation? He didn't flinch. Yes. Give me a topic. They did. He had 48 hours. That night, Malik sat in his dorm, the campus humming outside with protests and debates. Andre brought him food and a whiteboard, and a few classmates stayed to help him brainstorm. But Malik knew this one had to come from him alone. He pulled out his notebook. New topic: the rhetoric of resistance in American educational structures. He grinned slightly. They wanted proof? Fine. He'd give them fire. On a chilly Thursday morning, the university's lecture halls buzzed with something more potent than caffeine: unrest. Malik Carter had become a name on everyone's lips. Not just as the accused but as a symbol of resistance, of intelligence denied, of quiet storms turned hurricanes. By 9 a.m., dozens of students gathered outside the humanities building again, but this time they weren't just holding signs. They had a stage, microphones, speakers. The protest had evolved into a full-scale rally. Malik hadn't planned to speak again. He wasn't an activist. He didn't want to be anyone's cause. But Andre shoved the mic into his hand anyway. Say something. This is yours now. Malik looked out at the growing crowd, black, white, brown, queer, disabled, all drawn together by something raw and electric. I didn't ask to be here, he began. I didn't ask to be accused. But I will ask this: why does excellence scare some people more than dishonesty? Applause thundered. Someone filmed. A freshman handed Malik a placard that read, "You can't grade away our genius." Inside her office, Professor Harrow watched from behind the blinds. Her inbox now had over 200 unread emails. The administration told her to limit communication and to let the process unfold, but the damage was done. She clicked open the newest message from a former student. Evelyn, this isn't the first time, is it? You flagged my paper sophomore year too. I didn't have the fight Malik does. I just took the 0. I thought maybe I wasn't that good. The message sat on her screen like a confession. She couldn't look away. Malik's second paper was due tomorrow. He'd spent the previous night pacing his room, sketching ideas on post-its, scribbling quotes, and reading Paulo Freire until sunrise. The paper was coming together fast, because it wasn't just a paper. It was a weapon. Andre sat across from him, eyes bloodshot, half asleep but determined. You're gonna kill this man? I better, Malik said. Because if this doesn't work. He didn't finish. He didn't need to. They both knew what failure meant. It wasn't just a bad grade, it was validation for every whispered doubt, every sideways glance, every future rejection. Day 5. The university provided Malik with a glass-walled conference room for the writing session. A professor from the law school, a black woman named Dr. Patrice Monroe, volunteered to supervise, ensuring fairness. She greeted Malik warmly. I read your first paper, she said. Don't worry. Just be who you are. That helped. Malik sat at the computer. A blank Word document stared back at him. He cracked his knuckles, took a breath, and began. Outside the room, a silent crowd formed. Dozens of students sat cross-legged on the floor, reading books by Baldwin, Hooks, and Du Bois. It was a study-in, organized by the Black Student Alliance. Cameras hovered. Reporters from local news stations showed up. One headline later that night would read, University divided as student writes paper to prove innocence. Meanwhile, Dean Keller summoned Professor Harrow. She walked into his office stiffly, like someone bracing for impact. The board meets tomorrow morning, he said without preamble. If Malik's second paper is of the same quality and completed fairly, your original accusation will be dismissed. He cheated, she said, though her voice had lost its edge. It's not provable, but I know it. Dean Keller sighed. Knowing and proving are not the same. And the backlash is growing, Evelyn. We're receiving complaints from former students, alumni, donors. Harrow paled. I've served this school for 21 years. I know. That's why I'm telling you privately, let this go. She didn't answer. Back in the writing room, Malik typed like his life depended on it. His paper had taken on a tone sharper than the first. Angrier, yes, but clearer too. The thesis read, "To deny the intellect of the oppressed is not simply ignorance, it is maintenance of the very structures that demand their silence." By the 6th hour, his fingers ached. Dr. Monroe brought him water. Almost there. Malik smiled. It's going to burn when they read it. That night, he returned to his dorm and collapsed into bed. He dreamt of classrooms filled with mirrors instead of blackboards, every student forced to stare at themselves while trying to learn. And somewhere in the background, Dr. Harrow whispered, "You can't be this smart. You can't be this smart." He woke up with his jaw clenched tight. Day 6. The paper was done. Submitted. The Academic Integrity Board met in the afternoon. 5 members, 2 faculty, 1 administrator, and 2 students. Malik sat across from them, calm but alert. They handed him a printout of the second essay. Each board member had a marked-up copy of the first. Dr. Monroe confirmed the controlled conditions. "Mr. Carter," the chair began, "these papers are not only consistent in voice and style, they are exceptional." "Thank you," Malik said, voice steady. The student rep spoke next. "I just want to say, if we're reviewing this to determine whether Malik cheated, the only thing he's guilty of is being better than expected." Laughter. Light but real. Professor Harrow was not present. The board voted unanimously. No violation found. That evening, the university issued an official statement clearing Malik Carter of all accusations. Malik didn't feel victorious. He felt exhausted. Outside his dorm, a chalk mural had appeared overnight. It showed a silhouette in mid-stride, walking from a broken desk toward a flaming quill. Below it, in big block letters, "They tried to fail him." He wrote back. Malik stood in the center of the quad as a dozen people clapped him on the back, shook his hand, or simply gave him long, grateful looks. His name was safe. His work was safe. His record remained unblemished. But something inside him was not. "You did it, bro." Andre grinned, practically bouncing. "You dropped a whole nuke on that committee. That quote about the intellect of the oppressed? Bars." Malik nodded but barely smiled. The air smelled like victory, but it tasted like ash. "They cleared me," he said. "But they didn't apologize." "Oh, the board?" "No. Her. Dr. Evelyn Harrow. Absent from the hearing. Silent since the protests began. Shielded by tenure and policy." "She's hiding," Andre said. "Can't face the fire she started." Malik looked past the crowd to the humanities building's tall, gray windows. "She should be required to." The next morning, Malik met with the chair of the Black Student Alliance, Amaya Brooks, in a corner booth at a local coffeehouse. "This isn't over," she said, flipping open her laptop. "You winning your case is just step 1. We've compiled 8 other student stories, black and brown, accused of plagiarism or unfair grading by Harrow in the past 6 years. None of them fought back. Why not? They didn't have a shot. Some were freshmen. Some were international students. A few dropped the class to avoid the mark. One left the school entirely." Malik sat back, stunned. "So she's been doing this. Or something like it," Amaya said. "We're writing a joint letter to the provost. Want your name on it?" Malik hesitated. "You think it'll make a difference?" "It's already making noise. Faculty are paying attention. And if we publish it, media will too." Malik looked down at his hands. Calloused knuckles from late-night typing. Sweat-darkened palms. "Yeah. Put my name on it." Dr. Harrow hadn't left her house in 3 days. The curtains were drawn. Her phone was on silent. Food containers piled near the door like the debris of a quiet collapse. She sat in the middle of her living room, Malik's second paper printed out and spread across her coffee table. She had read it 5 times. She had marked the margins. Not for errors, there were none, but in search of cracks. Places where she could say, "This isn't real," and believe it. But it was real. It was brilliant. And it was damning, not just to her accusation but to the foundation she'd built her career on. Her belief in structure, in merit, in measurable, predictable genius. And yet she had looked Malik in the face and told him he didn't write it. She hadn't even doubted herself then. Now she couldn't sleep. 2 days later, the letter from the Black Student Alliance dropped on Campus Wire and Medium. It had over 5,000 views within the first hour. The headline read, "We wrote the papers too, a pattern of bias in the classroom." It included detailed accounts, some anonymous, of Dr. Harrow questioning the authorship of students' work, grading down intellectual arguments as too ambitious, or suggesting students simplify their language. One quote struck hard. "She told me to stop using words I didn't fully understand. I'd gotten them from our assigned reading." That same day, faculty from the English and African American Studies departments issued a letter of solidarity with the students. A second protest was announced. This time, not just in support of Malik, but in support of every student whose brilliance had been buried in red ink and disbelief. The university administration called a faculty meeting. Dr. Harrow sat in the back row, silent, while the dean outlined the scope of the investigation, an internal review into grading patterns, appeals, and student complaints. "We are not prejudging," the dean said carefully, "but we are listening." The room buzzed with unease. Some professors crossed their arms in quiet defensiveness. Others looked relieved that someone was finally addressing what they had long whispered about. When the meeting ended, Dr. Monroe approached Harrow quietly. "You have two choices," she said. "Be the villain in their story, or admit you never let them be the authors of their own." Harrow said nothing, but her hands trembled. Meanwhile, Malik was drowning in attention. Local journalists wanted interviews. National Education Podcast reached out. A New York Times columnist followed him on Instagram. His DMs were overflowing with praise and pressure. "You're gonna be famous," Andre said, scrolling through mentions. "I don't want to be famous," Malik replied. "I just want to write." "And now you can. You prove them wrong." "Yeah," Malik said. "But at what cost?" He hadn't slept more than 5 hours in 3 days. He jumped at sudden noises. He replayed Harrow's accusation over and over in his mind. Worse than her words were her eyes, that dead certainty that he was incapable of being great. Even after being vindicated, a part of him still felt like he had to prove himself in every class, every sentence. That weekend, the university hosted a panel on academic equity. Malik was invited to speak. He nearly declined. But Amaya nudged him into it. "You're already doing the work. Might as well say it loud." The auditorium was packed. Professors, students, even alumni. Malik took the podium slowly, heart pounding. He'd spoken before, but this felt different. This time he wasn't just defending himself. He was redefining the conversation. "I was accused of cheating," he began. "Not because of evidence, but because of excellence. That should terrify you. Not because it happened to me, but because it's normal." He paused. The room was silent. "I was told my work didn't sound like me. But what does that mean? That I don't sound smart? That I don't sound academic? Or just that I don't sound white?" Gasps rippled through the crowd. Intelligence doesn't come in one dialect. Genius doesn't wear one face. And if your system only recognizes brilliance when it looks like you, then you're not measuring brilliance. You're measuring conformity. Applause erupted. Loud. Long. Malik stepped back from the mic, chest heaving. In the back row, unnoticed, Professor Harrow slipped out the side door. That night, Malik received a short, surprising email. Subject, meeting. From Dr. Evelyn Harrow. Message, Malik, if you're willing, I'd like to meet. No committee. No board. Just us. I owe you something. Harrow. Malik sat at a table in the student union, fingers curled tightly around a paper cup of lukewarm coffee. His phone buzzed every 20 seconds. Notifications, retweets, follow requests. But he ignored it. His eyes were fixed on the screen in front of him, reading and rereading Harrow's email. No committee. No board. Just us. What do you think she wants? Andre asked, seated across from him with a bowl of cereal drowning in chocolate milk. Maybe to clear her conscience. Maybe to trap you into saying something she can twist. Malik looked up. You really think she'd do that? Andre gave him a level stare. After everything she already did? Malik didn't answer. A strange ache sat behind his sternum, something between curiosity and resentment. He couldn't tell which was stronger. The meeting took place in Harrow's office on Sunday, late afternoon. She'd left the door slightly ajar. Malik knocked once and she looked up. "Come in." He hesitated. The room hadn't changed. The same bookshelves. The same ivy curling along the windowsill. The same framed certificate from Princeton. But it all looked smaller now. She gestured to a chair. He remained standing. "I read your latest paper 3 times, she began. "Each time I found something new." "I didn't come here for compliments," Malik said flatly. "I know." Her voice was quiet. "But I want to say this, I was wrong." Malik blinked. "I thought I was doing my job. Guarding academic integrity. But it wasn't about the paper. It was about me. About my assumptions. About my fear." "Fear of what?" She hesitated. "Fear of what it means when someone like you outpaces someone like me." Malik stared at her. "Someone like you? A professor. A gatekeeper. A person used to knowing where the lines are. But when your paper landed on my desk, the lines moved. That's not an excuse." "It's not meant to be," she said. "It's a confession." A pause stretched between them. She continued. "I'm going to resign." Malik's jaw clenched. "Why?" "Because an apology isn't enough. And because students deserve teachers who can see them clearly." He looked at her, really looked. She wasn't the towering figure from 2 weeks ago. She looked hollowed out. Ashamed. Human. "I'll believe it when I see it," he said and walked out. By Monday morning, the campus had split cleanly down a fault line. Some students cheered the rumors of Harrow's resignation. Others, mostly white, mostly from her department, rallied in her defense. A group calling itself Academic Defenders of Integrity began circulating a petition claiming she was being scapegoated by public outrage and reverse discrimination. Malik read it aloud to Amaya over lunch. "Reverse discrimination?" he muttered. "Seriously?" "They're scared," she said. "The system's being challenged and they're used to being on the right side of the desk." That night, a leaked email from a tenured philosophy professor hit campus wire. "We must protect academic authority. If every time a student makes noise we bend to pressure, we're eroding the very core of the university." Within minutes it was posted on Twitter, X, Instagram, and Reddit. Students replied en masse with screenshots of their own discriminatory experiences. A new hashtag began trending locally. Hashtag the core is rotten. Malik sat alone in the library after midnight trying to write something, anything, but his thoughts kept circling the same drain. He felt like he was being pulled in 5 directions at once. Activist, writer, symbol, student, target. He missed being just a name on the attendance sheet. He missed obscurity. His phone buzzed. It was a text from his mother. "Mom, I saw your speech. You looked like your grandfather when he was organizing at Howard. I'm proud. But are you okay?" He stared at the screen for a long time before replying. "Malik, I don't know." The next morning, the university's official Instagram page posted a video. Academic Equity in Practice. A roundtable with students and faculty. It featured clips from the recent panel, including Malik's now famous quote. "Genius doesn't wear one face." The comments section exploded. "This is real leadership. Why wasn't this happening 5 years ago? Malik Carter for president." But also, "This kid is just a TikTok activist. You're all burning a good professor over a race narrative. Guess white students aren't allowed to be smart anymore." Amaya called Malik that afternoon. "The New York Times is writing a feature. They want to include your story. I haven't even graduated yet. You might not have a choice. You're the face now." He didn't say it, but he was getting tired of being a face. Later that night, he received another unexpected message, this time from Dr. Monroe. Subject, recommendation. "Malik, I'd like to nominate you for the university's Emerging Scholar Fellowship. It's typically for seniors, but I believe you've earned it in more ways than one. Let me know if you're interested. P. Monroe." He read it 3 times before closing his laptop. On day 7, the same day the protests began 1 week earlier, Dr. Evelyn Harrow held a press conference in front of the Humanities Building. It was brief. There were no excuses. No clarifications. "I failed one of my students," she said. "I did not see his talent. I saw a threat. That is not education. That is fear. And it is not the kind of professor I ever meant to be. She paused. So I'm resigning. Effective immediately. Flashbulbs clicked. Someone sniffled in the crowd. Malik watched from the back, expression unreadable. I hope this university continues to question who it listens to, and who it silences. Then she walked off the podium. It was done. Later that evening, Malik sat with Andre and Amaya on the campus lawn under the glow of lamplight. She actually did it, Andre said. Damn. She didn't have a choice, Amaya replied. The truth came out. Malik stared up at the stars. You think anything really changes after this? Yes, Amaya said without hesitation. You changed it. Malik didn't answer. But for the first time in days he closed his eyes and felt the tension in his shoulders loosen, just a little. Malik never imagined silence could be so loud. The morning after Dr. Harrow's resignation, campus buzzed with cautious energy. Students whispered in corridors. Professors treaded lightly. Emails from the administration flooded inboxes. Statements about commitment to equity and healing, open office hours, upcoming town halls. But underneath the polished PR language, Malik felt a tremor in the university's foundation. Something had cracked. And no amount of policy language could smooth over the fault line. He walked past the philosophy department that afternoon. Harrow's nameplate was gone from the office door. In its place, a piece of paper taped up by a student. Read. This office is under reconstruction like everything else. Malik didn't smile. He didn't feel victorious. He felt tired. Later, Dean Keller invited him to a private meeting. The dean's office was sleek, modern, glass walls, clean lines, abstract art on the walls that tried too hard to feel progressive. Malik sat in a firm chair across from the man who'd once advised Harrow to let it go. I want to thank you, Keller began, for handling this entire situation with remarkable composure. I wasn't trying to be composed, Malik said. I was trying not to drown. The dean nodded slowly. We're reviewing our academic bias training. Re-examining grading audits. You've started a necessary conversation, and we'd like to involve you going forward. As a consultant? Something like that. And Dr. Monroe has formally submitted your nomination for the Emerging Scholar Fellowship. Malik raised an eyebrow. So I spent 2 weeks being accused, publicly shamed, nearly lose my academic record, and now I get a prize? It's not a prize, Keller said. It's recognition. For surviving? For changing the conversation. Afterward, Malik didn't go back to his dorm. He found himself wandering into the small, overlooked library annex, mostly used by grad students. It was quiet there. No murals. No whispers. Just rows of books no one read anymore. He sat at the back with a stack of Baldwin and Toni Morrison, but didn't read. He just sat, breathing. A librarian walked past and slid him a note. No words, just a quote handwritten. The world changes according to the way people see it. And if you can alter, even by a millimeter, the way people look at reality, then you can change it. James Baldwin. Malik folded the paper gently and tucked it into his journal. But while Malik was withdrawing, the storm outside kept growing. National outlets picked up the story. The New York Times ran a piece titled "Brilliance on Trial," when students must prove their genius. NPR hosted a segment featuring Malik's panel speech. Hashtags like #BelieveBlackBrains and #LetThemWrite exploded across Twitter and TikTok. Even celebrities chimed in. A Pulitzer-winning author tweeted, Malik Carter is why I teach. And why I'm also afraid of what academia still does to minds like his. And still others turned it into a fight. Why is one professor's mistake being used to dismantle academic rigor? You're all celebrating mediocrity in the name of diversity. Meanwhile, internal faculty emails were leaked. One from a senior white faculty member read, We're now in a position where any accusation can lead to a public hanging. The message is, professors beware. Students have the mob. Another professor fired back. Or maybe the message is, stop assuming brilliance only comes in one accent, one tone, one skin. The university quietly suspended the first professor. Malik read the leaks with numbness. Every revelation made him feel less like a student and more like a symbol, a battle flag held up by hands he didn't know. That Friday, the student newspaper interviewed Malik again. The journalist, a junior named Rin, asked softly, Do you think Dr. Harrow's resignation was enough? Malik thought for a moment. I think it's a beginning. But endings don't start with one person stepping down. They start when institutions stop expecting people like me to earn belief through pain. That night, Malik visited Professor Monroe's office. She greeted him with a hug. How are you holding up? She asked. I'm somewhere between grateful and hollow. That sounds about right. They sat across from each other with warm tea and long silences. Finally, Malik asked, Have you ever been disbelieved for being too good? Monroe nodded. Not in papers. In tone. In confidence. When I questioned certain authors or challenged canonical arguments, I was told I was being combative. That my intellect was too aggressive. Malik looked down at his tea. So what do you do? I teach anyway, she said. I mentor students who'll carry the torch farther. And I don't apologize for knowing what I know. On Saturday, the university held a community listening forum. Malik didn't speak, but he listened. A black sophomore in biology told the crowd, Every time I answer too fast in lab, my TA double-checks my answers. My white partner can say anything and get a thumbs up. An Asian American literature student said, My professor once asked me why I was writing about assimilation, so emotionally. Like it was a creative writing flaw, not a lived experience. A white student stood up and admitted, I believed Malik cheated when I heard. Not because he seemed dishonest, but because I expected someone else wrote it. That's on me. I'm sorry. No one clapped. But the silence afterward was thick with reckoning. Sunday afternoon brought one final surprise. A woman stood at Malik's door holding a slim folder. Hi, she said. I'm Dr. Julia Penn. I teach post-colonial studies at Yale. I read your first and second essays. Malik blinked. Oh, hi. We'd like you to consider a summer research residency. Fully funded. You'd work with a cohort of scholars exploring decolonial frameworks and academic voice. It's highly selective, but we'd like to waive the application. Malik stared. Why me? She smiled gently. Because your writing scared the right people. And inspired the rest. That night, Malik sat at his desk trying to process it all. The folder from Yale lay on his left. His battered notebook on the right. He opened the notebook and turned to a fresh page. Then wrote, I thought the fight was just to be believed. But maybe the fight is to write like no one can silence you. He exhaled and kept writing. Not for a grade. Not for redemption. But because the story wasn't over. It was only now beginning. Evelyn Harrow hadn't been on campus in 5 days. The house felt quieter than usual. The stack of unread newspapers on the porch had started to curl at the corners. Her inbox was full of reminders she had no intention of answering, exit interviews, HR paperwork, automated requests to clear out her faculty drive. She sat by the window watching the rain smear the world into a watercolor. In her lap lay a printed copy of Malik's original paper, slightly crumpled from repeated readings. She hadn't meant to read it again. But she always came back to the third paragraph. Intellectual resistance is not a moment but a posture. One that begins in silence, gains shape in erasure, and becomes language in defiance. She had underlined it twice. Flashback, 10 years earlier. Dr. Harrow stood before a packed lecture hall, younger and more confident. She'd just been granted tenure and was presenting on pedagogy and ethics in academic authorship. During the Q&A, a first-year black student named Jerome asked a pointed question. How do we distinguish between brilliance and fraud when we've never been trained to recognize brilliance outside white frameworks? The room had gone silent. She remembered laughing nervously, brushing it off. She never saw Jerome again. She never followed up. Now she remembered that moment like a crack in glass. Small, sharp, easy to ignore until it spread into everything. Back in the present, she stared at her bookshelf. Plenty of Foucault, Derrida, even a row of books on race and empire. But most were unread. Collected for appearances. Proof of range. She had built a career on structure, rules, clarity of thought. But clarity, she now understood, had been a weapon. And Malik's paper had disarmed her. Across campus, Malik sat in the back of a packed symposium on educational equity. He was one of the invited panelists but had asked not to speak this time. He just wanted to listen. A Latina grad student spoke passionately about how she was told her thesis was too emotional. A disabled student shared that professors often assumed his accommodations meant lowered standards. A trans student explained how their papers were praised only when they avoided personal narrative. And all of them kept circling the same unspoken truth. Academic rigor was never neutral. Afterward, Malik stepped outside, letting the brisk wind hit his face. Andre joined him a moment later, unwrapping a protein bar. "You looked like you were meditating in there." "I think I was." "Thinking about Yale?" Malik nodded. "Thinking about what it means if I go. If I leave. You'd be leveling up. I'd also be leaving behind a mess." Andre frowned. "This place will still be here. But what you started. That needs momentum. It's not running without you, but it doesn't need you to stay stuck." Malik didn't respond. But deep down he knew, staying might feel loyal. But leaving could be legacy. That night Amaya texted. "Amaya, emergency meeting. Tomorrow. Admin just proposed a new review board structure. They want you there. Faculty-student parity. Real power. We think they're actually listening." Malik stared at the message. Everything was moving fast again. Too fast. He closed the thread and opened a blank page in his journal. He didn't know what to write. Instead, he drew a line down the center and labeled one side fighter and the other scholar. Then he wrote, "What if I'm both?" The next day, the meeting unfolded in the main conference hall of the administrative building. For the first time, student leaders sat shoulder to shoulder with tenured faculty, not across from them. The table was round. Symbolic, maybe. But Malik noticed. Provost Lansing opened the discussion. "We've reviewed proposals from the Black Student Alliance and Faculty for Equity. We're considering a permanent review board where grading disputes are not just reviewed, but investigated, with equal student representation." One professor, a woman from the literature department, folded her arms. "This can't become a popularity tribunal." Amaya cut in sharply. "It's not. It's a check on unchecked bias." Another faculty member, older, male, leaned in. "We're talking about handing the keys to students who haven't taught a class in their lives." Malik spoke calmly. "Then teach us. But don't lock the door." Everyone went quiet. Then Dr. Monroe nodded. "That's the point, isn't it?" The meeting lasted 2 hours. By the end, a working group was established and Malik was nominated to co-chair it. As they filed out, Provost Lansing shook his hand. "You've been patient. And more than fair." Malik smiled thinly. "I wasn't trying to be fair. I was trying to be heard." Later that night, Malik did something unexpected. He walked across campus to Harrow's office. It was dark. Locked. Empty. But a janitor, recognizing him, offered to open it. He stood in the doorway for a long time. The room had been cleared. No books. No certificates. Just a single slip of paper taped to the wall. He stepped closer. It was his original paper. Pinned to it, a yellow sticky note. "I couldn't see you, but you made me see." Malik stared at it. Then gently he removed the paper and folded it. When he got back to his dorm, he called his mom. She picked up immediately. "Baby, I was just watching your speech on YouTube again. I think I'm gonna say yes to Yale." Pause. "Are you ready to leave all this behind?" "No," he said. "But I'm ready to carry it forward." That weekend, Malik met with Amaya, Andre, and 2 new freshmen from the Black Student Alliance. They were building something. A mentorship program, a writing group, a new student-led review resource. They called it the Carter Collective even though Malik protested. "I don't want my name on everything." "Too late," Andre grinned. "It's on the wall. And the t-shirts." Malik laughed, really laughed, for the first time in days. "Fine," he said. "But only if I get free merch." That night, Malik stood at the edge of the quad watching students pass by. No one pointed. No one stared. Some just nodded quietly. And that was enough. He opened his journal and wrote, "The turning point isn't when they apologize. It's when you stop waiting for it." The auditorium was packed. Rows of students, faculty, alumni, and administrators filled the seats. Reporters from local news outlets lined the back. The lights dimmed low, and the stage was set with 2 chairs, a microphone between them, and a podium just off to the side. It had been exactly 7 days since Dr. Harrow resigned. And somehow, the university had convinced her to return, for one last conversation. The event had no title, no promotional flyers, no hashtags. Just a blunt calendar entry on the university homepage. Academic integrity and reckoning. A public dialogue. The seating arrangement told its own story. Not a lecture, not a debate, but a reckoning. A meeting between the accused and the accuser, though the roles had blurred. Malik sat backstage, hands folded tightly in his lap, a mic clipped to his collar. Across from him, waiting silently, was Dr. Evelyn Harrow. She looked older than she had a week ago. Like the time away had carved something new into her face. Regret, maybe? Or recognition. "Are you sure you're ready for this?" asked Dr. Monroe, who was moderating. "No," Malik said honestly. "But I'm not doing it for me." The first 10 minutes were scripted. Dr. Monroe opened with prepared remarks about healing, systemic reform, and the power of student-led change. She acknowledged the pain of the past week and the responsibilities of the future. Then she stepped aside. Malik and Harrow walked out together. The applause was hesitant, polite for Malik, unsure for Harrow. They took their seats and silence fell over the room. Dr. Monroe began. "Dr. Harrow, thank you for agreeing to be here. You've said you have something you'd like to say before we begin." Harrow leaned toward the mic. Her voice was calm but rough, as if disuse had frayed it. "I accused Malik Carter of academic dishonesty. Not based on evidence. Not based on plagiarism detection. But based on what I believed was possible. And that belief was poisoned by bias." She paused. "I saw excellence and I assumed fraud. I saw brilliance and I felt threatened. I called myself objective. But I wasn't. I was gatekeeping." Her voice cracked. "I'm sorry." Gasps fluttered through the room. A few students lowered their eyes. A couple of faculty shifted uncomfortably in their seats. "I didn't just fail Malik," she continued. "I failed my profession. I failed the ideals I claim to uphold. And I know a resignation isn't redemption. It's only the first step." She turned to Malik now fully. "I am sorry for the harm I caused you, the doubt I planted in others, and the history I repeated." The room was still. Malik's fingers tightened in his lap. He wasn't angry. Not anymore. He was tired. And yet, hearing those words aloud, in front of witnesses, into a mic from the same voice that once accused him, it mattered. He took a breath and leaned forward. "I believe your apology," he said. "But I also believe apologies are just words until they change something." A murmur of agreement rippled through the students. "You hurt me," he continued. "But worse, you taught others to doubt people like me. You modeled it. You gave it structure." Dr. Harrow nodded once, slowly. She didn't interrupt. "I can't tell you what to do next," Malik said. "But I can tell you what I'm doing. I'm writing. I'm mentoring. I'm staying visible so the next student doesn't have to stand alone." Applause broke out. This time, full and unrestrained. Dr. Monroe stepped back in. "And what does justice look like to you, Malik?" He paused, searching. "Justice looks like never needing this kind of meeting again." After the event, people lingered. Faculty shook Malik's hand. Reporters jostled for quotes. Students hugged him, handed him thank you notes, some just whispered, "You saved me." But Harrow didn't stay. She slipped out through a side exit, coat collar pulled up, face unreadable. Malik saw her go. He didn't stop her. The next morning, Malik returned to his dorm room to find an envelope slipped under the door. His name was written on it in looping cursive. Inside was a short letter. "Malik, words are brittle things. They don't always hold the weight they need to. But your words never broke, not even when mine tried to cut them down. I wanted to tell you privately that I've donated the entirety of my retirement fund to a new scholarship for first-generation writers of color. It will be administered by a board of students. It's not enough, but it's something real. I hope you'll help shape it. Evelyn Harrow." That afternoon, Malik walked to the quad. It was warm, unseasonably so. Spring had arrived early, as if the world wanted to start over too. He found Amaya sitting under the mural. She looked up, already smiling. "You did it." "I didn't do it alone." "No," she said, patting the grass beside her. "But you stood in the fire. And you didn't burn." News of the event spread fast. Clips from the apology circulated online. Some praised Harrow's courage. Others said it was the bare minimum. But one clip in particular went viral. Malik's words about justice. "Justice looks like never needing this kind of meeting again." That line was quoted in editorials, printed on protest signs, made into phone wallpapers. And still Malik felt no pride in it. He felt responsibility. A week later, the university formally announced the Malik Carter Initiative for Equity in Education, a program to embed racial and cultural bias training into curriculum development, syllabi reviews, and faculty onboarding. Malik agreed to serve on its advisory board. It wasn't a perfect program, but it was real. 2 weeks after the apology, Malik got an email from Yale. Subject: Welcome to the fellowship. Malik, we're thrilled to confirm your spot in the summer residency. Your cohort will include 5 emerging scholars in post-colonial and diasporic thought. See you in June. Dr. Julia Penn. Malik closed his laptop and let out a long, slow breath. The horizon had widened. That evening he returned to the humanities building. Not for a class. Not for a protest. Just to walk the halls. He found the office that used to be Harrow's. It was empty again. But the paper he'd taken down, the one with her sticky note, was now framed on his desk. He decided to keep it. Not as a trophy. Not as proof. But as a reminder. Even paper has memory. He pulled out his journal and wrote. The apology mattered. Not because it erased what happened, but because it confirmed it wasn't imagined. Malik Carter sat on the edge of the Amtrak train seat, his knees grazing a worn duffel bag and his laptop humming softly on the tray table. Outside the window, the world blurred past. Green fields, brick towns, rust-colored water towers, and the long stretch of horizon that had once felt impossibly far. He was headed north, bound for New Haven. Bound for Yale. Bound for what came after. In the 2 weeks since the public apology, campus had slowly returned to something like normal, except it wasn't the same. The humanities building had begun renovations. Not to the structure but to the policies. Faculty meetings now included student liaisons. The grading appeal system had been overhauled. 2 new positions had opened in the Office of Equity, filled by people who knew how to listen. And something intangible had shifted too. Professors had begun rereading the work of students they'd once dismissed. A new student literary journal launched under the name Verbatim, dedicated to publishing voices that were once questioned. And the first recipient of the Harrow Scholarship for First-Gen Writers of Color was a soft-spoken freshman named Zuri James. She introduced herself to Malik one afternoon by saying, "I didn't think I belonged here until I saw you speak." He didn't know what to say. He just said, "You do." Now the train rumbled on and Malik opened a fresh document. Title: The Line Between. He paused. It was the name of his new manuscript. Not a paper. Not a think piece. A book. A book about thresholds. The line between being seen and being doubted. Between rage and restraint. Between apology and transformation. Between who you are and who the world will let you be. He began typing. They asked me to prove that I was brilliant. I asked them to prove they could see brilliance when it didn't look like them. He stopped, reread it, and nodded. Yale's summer residency was housed in a cluster of brownstone buildings lined with ivy and trimmed hedges. It was beautiful in a way that didn't quite sit right, too manicured, too polished, but Malik knew how to navigate these spaces now. Not by shrinking. By writing louder. On the first day, Dr. Julia Penn welcomed them with a simple challenge. You are here not just because of what you've written, but because of what you refuse to stop writing. Malik met the other fellows. A queer poet from Chicago, a Haitian historian, a Nigerian-American dramatist, a former foster youth who wrote essays that sliced like glass. They were all survivors of erasure. And now they were building something together. 1 week into the program, Malik received an email from Campus Wire. Subject: 1 year later. We're preparing a reflective feature on your story and its ripple effects. Would you be willing to contribute a letter to future students who might one day face what you did? He didn't hesitate. He opened a new file and wrote, Dear future writer, there will be days when your brilliance will feel like a liability. When they'll tell you your voice is too loud, your words too sharp, your ideas too polished to be authentic. Keep writing anyway. They may ask you to explain yourself, to water down your fire into something they can bottle and label as safe. Don't. Your voice is not a threat. It's a mirror. If they flinch, it's not because you're wrong, it's because they haven't learned how to look at themselves. Be unignorable. With you always, Malik. He clicked send and closed the laptop. That night he walked to the campus green, notebook in hand. Fireflies blinked across the grass like commas in an unwritten poem. He thought about his mother, who used to stay up late reading his early essays aloud, pausing after each paragraph to say, "That's good, baby. That's real good." He thought about Harrow's office, now stripped clean, and the framed note he still kept in his dorm room drawer, not as forgiveness but as proof. He thought about the mural on his old campus, which had faded slightly in the summer heat, but was still visible. They tried to fail him. He wrote back. And he smiled. Because in the end it wasn't about the scandal. It wasn't about Harrow. It wasn't even about the apology. It was about the answer. The one he gave not when he defended himself, but when he kept writing. 3 months later, his manuscript was finished. It wasn't perfect, but it was true. He sent it to Dr. Monroe first, who responded with just 3 words. "You found it?" Then he sent it to Zuri James, the scholarship freshman, who emailed back. "I didn't know you could write about pain and still make it feel like light. I want to write like that." In the final scene of his book, Malik wrote about his last night on campus before leaving for Yale. He described standing in front of the library, hands in his pockets, watching a group of incoming freshmen take a tour. One of them looked like him, tall, wide-eyed, hoodie half-zipped. He walked over and introduced himself. "Are you Malik Carter?" the student asked. "Yeah. I heard about what happened. That whole thing with the professor." Malik nodded. "Yeah. That happened. Is it true you made them change the rules?" Malik smiled. "Not just me." The student hesitated. "You think I can make it here?" And Malik looked him in the eye and said, without hesitation, "You already have." The last line of his book, centered on the final page, read, "The horizon didn't get closer. I just stopped thinking it was out of reach." In bookstores across the country, both physical and digital, the line between debut to critical acclaim. Educators assigned it. Activists quoted it. Students underlined its margins like scripture. But Malik didn't care about bestseller lists or reviews. He cared about the message getting through. He cared about the kids who wrote papers late at night and then wondered if their brilliance would be seen as suspicious. He cared about the ones no one believed, yet. And most of all, he cared about leaving a path behind him that was just a little clearer than the one he had walked. At a university in the Midwest, during a guest lecture, a professor asked him, "Mr. Carter, what do you think we owe our students?" He thought for a moment, then answered, "To believe them. Before they have to prove it." The crowd stood. The applause thundered. And Malik Carter, who once stood accused of writing too well, stood unshaken at the center of it all. Not as a victim. Not even as a symbol. But as a voice that could no longer be ignored. Thank you for listening. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel and like the video.